Hi there, everyone. It's Bethany. Today's OT activity is going to be a tactile bin. A tactile bin can be made with anything from around the house, from outside, anything that can provide your child some extra input to their hands and their fingertips. A lot of times when children are having difficulty with controlled movements of their fingers, holding a utensil, holding a marker or a pen to write with, it's because they're not getting enough input to let them know what's going on with the tips of their fingers, with their hands in general. So a tactile bin is a great way to give a little bit of extra input to let your child know, here are my hands, here are my fingers, and kind of wake them up before they do an activity that requires a lot of that fine motor precision and fine motor control. So I've got two examples of tactile bins today. One of them is just some flowers. It's actually an old bouquet that I had sitting on the counter and was starting to not look so pretty. Something exciting about this tactile bin is that it also has an aroma to it. So that's something I did not consider when I was making it, but that's definitely a component of tactile bins that can help to either alert a child or to calm them down. So if you think about, we've done coffee bean tactile bins at the office. You could also put some lavender scent into either Play-Doh or a wet tactile bin. Scent is something that can either help alert or calm your child that can easily be incorporated into a tactile bin. So I've got my floral tactile bin here, and then I've got a edible tactile bin that has some plantain chips, some chips that are made out of peas, and some popcorn. I specifically wanted to show you an edible tactile bin because I know that a lot of the students that I work with have a tendency to put everything in their mouth. So if that's your child, don't hesitate to do a tactile bin. Just make sure that it's things that are appropriate for them and safe for them to put in their mouth, or make sure that you're providing the appropriate supervision so that they don't accidentally put something in their mouth that might be dangerous for them. I'm telling you, your parents, you know, I don't gotta tell you. So things to consider when you're putting together your tactile bin is that dry items are a little bit less intimidating for some children than the wet items. So both of these tactile bins are dry. So if I put my hand in them and I don't like how it feels, I can immediately pull them out and nothing is stuck to my hand. With a wet tactile bin or a tactile bin with a sticky texture to it, that's a little bit more intimidating, especially if your child has sensitivities. If they pull their hand out, they've still got a bunch of pudding, shaving cream, jello, whatever it is on their hand. So even if it's a dry tactile bin, and I don't think that it's going to be an aversive reaction, I like to have a cloth nearby, sometimes a wet cloth, depending on what the substance is that's inside the tactile bin. And then that is easy for the child to wipe their hands. I always demonstrate if I know that the child has a sensitivity, oh, I can wipe my hands. So then they know it's not the end of the world. If you get some of this on your hand, you can easily wipe it off. Then if you've considered, okay, I know my child doesn't really mind sticky textures, I'm gonna put a little bit of wet sticky textures in the tactile bin. Also consider how deep your tactile bin is. The deeper the bin, the more your child might have to dip their hand down into the substance and the more input they're going to get. A more shallow bin, there's a little bit less of an intimidation factor because they don't have to really dive down in with their hand. And then consider how deep you're putting the items into the bin. So even if you have a deep bin like this, you can just rest the items on top of whatever your bin is filled with. I've lost one of my pom-poms here. Ah, there it is. So you can rest the items on top, and then that way your child can reach them easily. If they don't feel comfortable putting their hand in and under all of the material, they can reach in, maybe touch it a little bit, but still interact in a safe and fun way with the item on top. If your bin is more shallow, then your child can more easily reach the items that are hiding in the bin. So they don't have to do quite as much digging. Another thing to keep in mind is that if your child is like completely put off by this, they don't want to dig in the bin, even if it's dry, you can try something smaller. So this is a lot of material. Your child might just want to explore a little bit of it. I've done little tactile bins for outdoor things that children tend to be intimidated by. So if your child does not like the sand at the beach or the dirt outside in the garden, just having a little tiny tactile bin with that material can help your child get more familiar. So if you have a little bit of sand in a tiny little tactile bin and you stick a Lego in there because you know your child likes Legos, they'll reach in, shake the sand off the Lego, and then that will be one positive experience they have with the sand of, oh, I interacted with sand and nothing too terrible happened. Another way that you can encourage your child to participate with these materials if they don't want to touch them is you can use tools. So you can either have them scoop items out with a spoon, or if you have child tongs at your house, they can use tongs. So that way they're interacting with the material without directly touching it. So I'm just going to show two examples of activities that I would do with the tactile bins. Some kids really like to just explore and play in tactile bins, and for other kids it helps to have that structure that we've talked about before. What is the point of this? So for this tactile bin, I have hidden some straws in there. I'm not sure that you can see them, but your child would find the straw and then stick it into the put-in container. Find a straw and then stick it in. It would help because you can't exactly tell how many items are in here. So if you want to tell your child at the beginning, there's 4 straws and then we're all done. That will help them have a good expectation of how long they're going to be doing this activity. And then you can also just hide items for a more basic put in. So I've hidden these pom-pom balls, and then just have another container for them to put the items in, so then they have a good sense of task completion. I hope you have fun exploring around the house, kind of looking at things with a tactile eye. How would that feel? How would that feel? Outside is great too. Little bits of flowers, mulch, bushes, dirt. The last little bit of advice is if your child tends to throw things or make a mess, if you take a look at this and say, no way my child would have that all over in an instant, try and start with organic material outside, because then if your child ends up throwing the popcorn or throwing the flowers or the leaves around, it's no big deal, it's outside, and the mess really doesn't matter that much. Have fun, enjoy, and as always, let me know if you have any questions.